Hello, I am Parvinder Kaur, Assistant Professor, Fashion Design Department, RIMT University, Punjab. Today I am going to present a presentation on drafting and pattern making terminologies. Drafting is a technical drawing of a garment which we make with the help of measurements we take from dress form or from the standard measurement chart or from the actual body, and then that measurements we use to convert them into 2D patterns, and then from that 2D patterns we make the garment cutting. Terminologies. Technical terms used in the drafting and pattern making for specific description are known as terminologies. Anthropometry, a scientific study of taking measurements and proportions of the human body, is known as anthropometry. According to the anthropometry, there is a sequence of taking measurements. First of all, we used to take lengthwise measurements which are perpendicular to the floor, and then we used to take widthwise measurements which are parallel to the floor, and then we used to take girthwise measurements which are in the round. Dress form. First terminology we are going to study is a dress form. Dress form is a three-dimensional model of a torso which is used to check the fitting of the cloth which we are designing and making, and then we can use it for taking standard measurements. Bodies. It is a part of a pattern that covers our body from nape of the neck to the waist. Apex. It is the fullest part of our bust which is also occur as the dart point. Next is armscye. It is a section of a pattern into which a sleeve is fitted. It is also known as armhole. Shoulder slope. It is the angle at which your shoulder descends from the side of your neck to the top of your arm. It can be described into three parts. First, it can be flat, or it can be normal, or it can be most sloped. Next, selvage, an edge produced on the woven fabric during manufacturing that prevent it from the unraveling. Grain lines. Grain lines are the directions of the fabric which plays very important role while we work with the fabric. There are three types of grain lines on the fabric. First is lengthwise grain line. Lengthwise grain line is also known as on grain, which is parallel to the selvage and have no stretch. Next is crosswise grain line, which is also known as off grain and have minor stretch in it, which is perpendicular to the selvage. And third is bias grain. Bias grain is a diagonal direction of the fabric, and it is further divided into two parts, bias and true bias. Bias is a diagonal line at any angle on the fabric, but true bias is a diagonal line at the 45-degree of a angle on the fabric which has maximum stretch. On-fold. Whenever we make a garment, the most of the garments are symmetrical on both the sides. So, when we cut the fabric, before we cut the fabric, we make a pattern, and we make pattern for only one side. So, we mark a on-fold mark as it is given on the image on the pattern, so that the cutter may come to know that the fabric has to be folded from the center front when he has to cut the pattern on the fabric. Next is blocking, pulling or stretching the fabric to produce a perfect perpendicular cross grain to the length grain. Next is a block or a sloper. Pattern making blocks refers to the individual piece that together create a full sloper. For example, front and back bodice block, basic skirt and basic sleeves are the slopers, and together they make are the slopers, which are individually known as the blocks, but together they are called as slopers. Slopers plays very important role in drafting and pattern making because they are made with the basic measurement of our body, and all the other garments which we are going to create, new designs we are going to create, are going to make we are going to make with the slopers only, without disturbing the measurements. Next is working pattern. Working patterns are the patterns when we transfer the block pattern on a hard sheet and then mark all the allowances like seam allowance, ease allowance, button lines, center front line, pleats, then that is called as working pattern. Commercial pattern, the ready-made patterns that of a particular garment that we get from the market are known as commercial patterns. Commercial patterns are very much useful for the people who don't know about the pattern making. They can they can buy the ready-made patterns from the market and can use them for the cutting of their garment. Darts. Darts are the triangle elements of the pattern that are sewn together to make a garment fit to the body and are also used as the designing elements. In the darts, when we draw the darts, there are different elements in the dart also. There are dart legs, the two lines which are triangularly made, which are bring together and for the stitching are known as dart legs. Dart fold lines, these are the lines at the center of the dart from which the dart is to be folded. Dart vanishing point, dart ending point is known as the dart vanishing point. Dart intake, it is the quantity of fabric that is intaken when you have to sew the dart. Allowance, there are two types of allowance in the pattern. First is ease allowance and second one is seam allowance. Ease allowance is the amount of room a garment allows to the wearer beyond the measurement of the body to the flexible movement of a body. Seam allowance, it is the area between the fabric edge and the line of stitching, which is always given in the garment, and it varies from place to place, like there will be less seam allowance on the shoulder and more seam allowance on the side seam. Lines, so there are two types of lines in the patterns. First one is cutting line, which is at the outermost edge of the pattern from where we have to cut the pattern, and next is seam line. Seam line is the line from where we have to sew along, usually 5 by 8 inches in from the cutting line. Next is clipping and notching. Clipping is done on the concave areas. As we know, we have our body have many curves like neckline, armhole or side seam. So, to make a fabric move along our body curves, we have to make it flexible by clipping and notching. So, it depends on the areas to select whether we have to clip it or we have to notch it. At the concave curves like necklines or armholes, we have to clip the fabric, and at the convex curves with like princess seams or bust lines, we have to notch the fabric to make it flexible to move around the curves of our body. Punch and punch circles, it indicates the dart points, tucks, buttonholes, button replacement, pocket placements and applique placements. Thank you.